Okay, Munchkins, I'm going to give you a little video about how to start and work through a snowflake. There are several different ways to fold paper for a snowflake, but I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that will help you get a successful result. So first, if you're using just a normal rectangular sheet of printer paper, you need to make it into a square. So go ahead and fold your paper over like so. Let's get it so you can see it. There we go. And we're going to cut this section off, and that will leave us with a square here. Okay. So we don't need this piece anymore. That could go into paper chains or something like that maybe. But we've got our square here. If I open it up, we've got a square. Now, the important part of a snowflake is to make sure that you know where this center point is when you're folding it. If you don't fold a snowflake quite right and then you start cutting it, it has a tendency to fall apart. So we're going to fold it over to make a big triangle like this. And I'm still remembering that that was my center point right there. Okay, I'm going to fold it over around that center point, imagining there's an imaginary line here where I'm going to fold, but I'm remembering that's the center point there. Okay, now do you remember where the center point was? It's this guy, right? If I were to fold around this corner or this corner, I would get something that would fall apart when I started cutting it. So I'm remembering this is my center point. I'm going to imagine an imaginary line coming out of there from the center point and fold along that line. So I'm bringing these 2 points together now. And making a nice crease. So I've got another triangle, but I'm remembering that that was my center point there. And I can sometimes pinch it if I'm holding it up, or I make sure I keep my finger there. So I always remember that's the center point. And I'm imagining another imaginary line coming out from the center point, dividing this paper in half. I'm going to fold along that, bringing these two edges together. And again, there are many different ways to make a snowflake and fold the paper. This is a good way to start, even though you do get a pretty thick amount of paper here. So you'll see, if I hold it up, you can see it a little better, that the sides, these edges, are not the same. And that's okay. If I were to use this shape, just as it is, to cut my little snowflake shapes into, I would end up with a square snowflake. Here's an example of one that I've kind of already started. I've still got that same shape there, you see that? But on the other side, I drew out little designs. It's good to start with kind of easy slope designs or straight line designs, because this can be kind of tricky to cut through. Once you have your designs on there that you'd like, you want to make sure that there's not too much leftover white spot here in the middle, see, because all that white stuff is going to be what's left over. And if you have a snowflake with a ton of white stuff, it doesn't have that many, well, it's not super interesting. So you want to make sure that there's a little bit of space in between, but not too much space. And then those shapes that you've drawn, you cut right out. I already started with 2 like that. So I'll show you that when you're cutting through, even on the side that opens up, you want to make sure that you cut through all the different layers of paper. Okay, like this one here. Okay, so I've made a little shape there. If you want to have a little bit cut out down in the middle, or down at the very, very point, that's often nice because that gives you a little design right in the center of the snowflake. So I'm going to cut off just a little tip of it to have a little hole in the middle. So this is a partially done snowflake, right? But you can imagine if those were all cut out and I was opening it up, you could see there's that point in the middle that I cut off, making that nice shape there. That little star shape in the middle. So you can see there's still a lot of white space, and that actually, it does make a nice snowflake. So it's up to you how you'd like to make your shapes. Here's one that square that I already all finished with. And you can see that if you choose different shapes, these are all kind of pointy. There are no rounded ones. So that one's a little more pointy than this one, which did have some kind of rounded slopes to it. So that's how you make a square snowflake. If you wanted to make a snowflake that was round, you would fold your paper in the same way, and then you would draw a little arc. Not up here where the point is on the longer part of the paper, but on the shorter part of the paper, draw an arc along there. And then you would cut right along that arc to give your paper that rounded edge, which does actually create a more rounded snowflake then, right? But before opening it all up, you would first draw your shapes again, draw some shapes in there, have things coming down from the top, maybe cut something off the tip so you have a nice little center piece. And once you've cut all those up and unfolded it, you would have a more rounded snowflake. So remembering when you're folding it to always remember where that center point is the really helpful part. Hopefully that will help you get some snowflakes going. And again, there are different ways to fold these. The template has you fold them a little bit differently, but if you just want to make some some snowflakes out of normal blank paper and use your own imagination, because all snowflakes are different, right? Your imagination will get you wonderful shapes too. Okay, I hope that was helpful, Munchkins.